Joining us to make his weekly visit, as he does every Friday, is the senior producer from NFL Films. Also, you can catch him on the ESPN NFL Matchup show weekend mornings on ESPN and ESPN2. It's Greg Cosell, ready to talk Seahawks Bills with us. Greg, how you doing?
Chris, Steve, what's going on today? Big one this weekend.
Yes, very big.
They're all big, Greg. Come on.
Hey, I know. Hey, there's only 16 of them, Steve. We hope there'll be 16 of them this year. So you're right. They're all big.
Yeah. Right. Why don't we start here, Greg? Because I was intrigued by this. You know, I was just kind of going through the stats that we kind of get from the league and whatnot, and I was looking to see if Seattle had played any teams that used a lot of 10 personnel like the Bills do. And I was surprised to see that the Arizona Cardinals have used 10 personnel even more than the Bills this year. They're the only team, those are the only two teams that really use it to that degree. So I don't know if you can go back a couple of weeks for me and just describe maybe what Seattle's defensive approach was to Arizona, knowing they have a mobile quarterback like the Bills do, and they use 10 personnel in a lot of the same ways the Bills do.
Yeah, 10 personnel is I mean, that's a Cliff Kingsbury thing. When he got to the league last year, in his first year, he started the season through the first 5 or 6 weeks using that as his foundation, because that's what he is. That's what he did in college. And then he kind of evolved into playing less 10 personnel because he found out that you can't just live on that in the NFL. Seattle they're a team that normally does not play a lot of dime, although they will play dime based on down and selected situations, but that's not a foundational approach for them. Cover 3 is kind of their standard, but it depends on the game. So they will play a lot of man coverage, but it's funny you mentioned Arizona. They played very little cover 1 versus Arizona. Less than 10% of the pass plays, the dropbacks by Kyler Murray with Seattle, they played cover 1. So they were very conscious of Kyler Murray's ability, Chris, to get out of the pocket and make plays with his legs. My sense is they would think the same way about Josh Allen.
Yeah, I was also...
Yeah, and how do you...
Sorry, Steve. I just wanted to follow up on this real quick. I also found it interesting that, you know, you look at the Bills' defense, they play nickel like 88% of the time this year. It's the highest percentage I've ever seen from that defense. It far and away leads the league. And then you look at Seattle, they're only in nickel 53% of the time. They play base 37.5% of the time. It's the third highest figure in the league.
Yes.
Now, I know they have great linebackers, and that's probably part of the reason they can do that. But the contrast in defensive personnel usage, I thought, was fascinating coming into this.
Yeah, well, as Steve knows, zone teams can certainly play in their base if they like their linebackers, because if you're going to play, let's say, cover 3 as a foundation, obviously a flat defender can be a linebacker. But no, you're right. And actually, Seattle played almost 70% base a year ago in 2019. Wow. So this is something that they do. They like their linebackers. But obviously, that will be dependent on how the Bills line up. The Bills have been playing for obvious reasons because Dawson Knox has been unavailable. They've been playing a lot out of 11 personnel the last number of weeks.
Yeah. So you see this Seattle Seahawks team coming in, and their schedule has not been a gauntlet in the first 6 or 8 games of the season, but they've played extremely well. Who's had the most success against Russell Wilson, and why?
Well, Wilson really has not had what you'd call a bad game. I think it was the game they lost. I'm trying to remember.
Arizona.
It was Arizona, 3 interceptions.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that necessarily is representative of anything. Arizona is not a defense that did, and I remember that game now. Arizona is not a defense that necessarily did anything where you went, oh my God, look what they did. He's played extremely well this year. They've clearly morphed into an offense that is not built on running the ball first, as they have been the last 2 years. This year, it's clearly a pass game. I don't know what the first down numbers are, but over the last 2 years, not counting this year, they were among the highest percentage in the league on first down rushes. That is not true this year. So they throw the football. They've got really, really good weapons, as you guys know, which really raises the matchup question in this game. We've seen over the last, I don't know how many weeks, but certainly a month, that Davious White has not been used as a matchup corner. He's been the boundary corner. So we'll see how Buffalo chooses to play this week, because Metcalf does line up as their boundary X, the single receiver to the short side of the field. But this year they are moving him around even more. And we'll see. So we'll see what Buffalo does.
Yeah, Seattle passes on first down, Greg, 39% of the time. That's the fourth highest percentage in the league. So, they are not a run-first team anymore, or at least not to the degree they used to be, for sure. I also found it interesting that they had a sharp spike in the amount of times they blitzed last week against San Francisco. Now, San Francisco was a kind of a wounded animal, but I can't imagine that they throw that much blitz at Josh, knowing his mobility this week.
No, well, again, that's a great point you made, Chris, because that's a function of who they played against. Obviously, Garoppolo did play 3 quarters, so that was game plan based on Jimmy Garoppolo and that offense. Jimmy Garoppolo is a pure pocket quarterback. So to me, that was purely a function of who they were playing. I doubt very much they will do that to the Bills and Josh Allen, because they blitzed a lot last week and they played some man coverage. They'll play man. Everybody plays some man coverage, obviously, but I would imagine this week that their blitzing will be much more selective. Based on down, based on field location. They will blitz because they do that. Bobby Wagner has become a really, really good blitzer as his career has progressed. And they line up in what a lot of teams do now. I call it a tilted front, where they line up with 3 defensive linemen to one side of the center, and they normally stunt to that side. And then Bobby Wagner is kind of the wild card who lines up opposite the tilt, and he could blitz, he could drop out, he could be part of a stunt. He's become very, very good at that. So I think you'll see that for sure. But the high percentage blitz, Chris, I'd be very surprised if they were anywhere near that against Josh Allen.
We talked a little bit about how big a win it was for Buffalo over New England this last week. We can get to that in a minute. But, a lot of Bills fans are wondering, the Bills were throwing it all over the yard in weeks 1 through 4. Then they went to Tennessee in that game. I kind of throw that game out because of the emotions of COVID and the Tuesday game and all of that. It's a little different emotionally. But the Kansas City game, same thing. What
Bad
are teams
weather.
Right. Tell us about what teams how do teams do you feel in their defenses? What do they perceive this Buffalo offense to be? And what are they doing, generally speaking, to Buffalo to keep them off the scoreboard like they were getting on the scoreboard in weeks 1 through 4?
Yeah, generally speaking, Steve, I mean, you go back to, let's say, Buffalo against Miami. I think it was week 2 when Miami literally played man coverage, it seemed, on every snap. And Buffalo ate them up. But I think what we've seen over the last, 3 weeks, a month, give or take, is teams have done a lot of disguise and late movement to get to zone coverage concepts. And what you're trying to do, Josh Allen is still a young quarterback, even though he's highly talented and clearly has improved. You're dealing with a young quarterback who still at times has to kind of decipher what he sees. And guys, in the NFL, it just takes half a beat, and that's a win for the defense. So they're trying to make Josh have to think through things from pre-snap to post-snap, and just slow down his decision-making, or what I call elimination and isolation, eliminating what's not there and isolating what is there within the timing of the drop and the play design. So I think that's what you've seen over the last 3 weeks or so.
Are you kind of anticipating, Greg, this is kind of what I'm thinking, going into this game defensively for the Bills? I mean, Metcalf and Lockett are not a good matchup for just about any cornerback tandem in the league. So knowing the challenges those two guys present outside, I have to believe that we're looking at another week of soft coverage, nothing cheap, nothing deep, and knowing how banged up their running back contingent is in Seattle, maybe they just say, hey, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us with your 3rd and 4th string running back, not with your 2 high-flying receivers.
Well, I hate to bring up bad memories for Steve, but maybe it's the old Bill Belichick approach in the Super Bowl. If you want to hand the ball off, have at it. We're going to take away the big plays. And if you want to hand it off to DJ Dallas, although I guess Chris Carson may go, I don't know if you have any report on that, But even if he does go, and I like Carson, but it could be. I mean, look, as you guys know, Buffalo plays more man coverage than people probably think because they think of Leslie and Sean as zone guys, but they play more man than people think. So the question is, as you just suggested, Chris, is this a game where they don't play as much man because of the nature of the wide receivers on Seattle, and they go back to playing more zone with the idea that you just suggested? Let's at least play with eye discipline, assignment discipline, leverage discipline, keep everything in front of us. And, if we don't give up a big play, sure, you still have a really good offense, and Wilson's great, but let's make you go 12 plays and score.
Well, the Bills have got their safety tandem back intact now. Micah Hyde will be back on the field for them. It looks like he's been cleared from the concussion protocol. Those two safeties plus Davious White, and now it looks like Levi Wallace will be back in. How does this secondary stack up against Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf?
Well, I don't think it sets up well if they're going to play man. I mean, we know Davious White's very good, and he can match up, certainly. But like I said, he's played boundary corner. He has not been a matchup corner the last month or so. So I would bet they'll play more zone. To me, a big loss, though, is Matt Milano, because I think Milano and Edmonds are top 3 to 5 in the league as far as sub-nickel linebackers. And A.J. Klein, certainly a veteran. He's been in the league a long time. It's not as if he's a weakness. But I'm a big Matt Milano fan, as you guys know, and I think in a game like this, that his loss, it could dictate some just changes in approach. When I say, I don't mean overall approach, but certain situations, because I think Milano is just a really good player.
With respect to Russell Wilson and all of his passing exploits, I think what's been lost on some people anyway is the fact that this team's second in the league in scramble yards by Wilson.
Of course.
It's almost like people are like, oh, yeah, he can run too. I forgot about that. What has been the general defensive approach from teams with respect to their rush? Are they trying to just squeeze the pocket so as to keep, the escape lanes closed down? What are they doing with Wilson this year?
Well, it depends on the team. I mean, some teams will spy him. Some teams will do just what you suggested. It's tough to play man-to-man, a heavy dose of man-to-man because you do present the running opportunities. I think Wilson, he's a very good runner, as we know, but I think he looks, and I know the yards are there, Chris, but I think he looks to run less than he did earlier in his career.
Right.
I think you really have to, set him up to run. If it's 3rd and 9, he's not just going to drop back and look for green grass. He's going to look to throw the football. But he certainly can run, and you do have to account for that. I don't think the Bills will spy. I mean, if they play zone, they won't spy. My sense is they're not going to play a ton of man. So I don't think they'll spy. I think they'll look to play zone, and obviously you've got the underneath defenders looking back in at Wilson. But again, there's probably going to be 3rd and 2s and 3rd and 3s, and those are man down. So at some point, you do have to play man coverage.
So we've talked about, Russell Wilson and his ability to run the football, but and how the Seahawks have evolved to this pass-first offense where even last year and the year before, they were run-first always. How big a compliment does their run game need to be going forward?
Oh, I think it'll be a factor. I think when Chris Carson is healthy, he fits them to a T. In some ways, it's what I think the Bills are trying to get to. You don't need an explosive big play back. What you want is a back that keeps you on schedule. And I know every team says that, and it's a cliche to some degree. But think of it this way, guys. When you have quarterbacks like Russell Wilson and Josh Allen who have that running ability and put that kind of pressure on a defense, they are super hard to defend when it's 3rd and 3 because, you just don't know what you're going to get. So with a back like Carson, ideally with a back like Zach Moss, who's getting more carries, we'll see as we go forward how that plays out with Singletary. Obviously, they each had 14 last week. But with those kinds of backs, they're grinders. They're sustaining grinders. They keep you on schedule. So you get to 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4 as opposed to 3rd and 9. And those downs with mobile quarterbacks are very hard for defenses.
All right, so let's move around the league here in Week 9. The one that jumped out at me was the quarterback battle that will, I believe it's the game's in Miami, Tua and Kyler Murray, two of the smaller statured quarterbacks, but certainly this has got some marquee billing here. What do you kind of see in that game?
Yeah, I mean, look, Tua didn't have to do much. He wasn't really challenged last week because of the nature of that game, because the Dolphins had such a good tactical game plan against the Rams that Tua was not really challenged to make throws that he'll have to make going forward. But even with that, I think you saw what they want to do with him: play action, boot action, timing rhythm throws. He's an accurate thrower. He had one throw that was really good where he eliminated what was not there, which was the primary read, and came back to the other side of the field within timing and structure. So overall, I thought he looked solid. But again, it was tough to get a great feel simply because he did not have to make many challenging throws.
One of the teams I want to ask you about as well is the Patriots. And first of all, you said it was a big win for the Bills last week, certainly going 4-0 in the division and all of that. Were there other reasons why that was such a big game? And what do the Patriots do going forward at quarterback?
Well, it's still Cam. I mean, they haven't announced anything otherwise, right? I mean,
no.
Yeah. So it's Cam. I mean, he's still struggling. He's still struggling with what he sees. He's still struggling to throw with timing. His ball placement has been erratic. He's not played very, very well. I mean, that's what the film shows. Obviously, he's the quarterback. They obviously feel he's their best guy, and we'll see going forward. Look, they run him a lot, as you guys saw last week. I think they'll continue to do that. I think that's a strength of his game as we speak right now, and they'll continue to work on the other parts. But to me, their best offensive player right now, and I think you saw that last week, and I mentioned this to someone 3 weeks ago, is Damian Harris. I thought he ran really well, really effectively. I loved him coming out of Alabama. I think he's a better back than Sony Michel, and it wouldn't surprise me if he supplants Sony Michel.
What do we think about the Ravens-Colts game from this standpoint, Greg? I mean, the Ravens' offense isn't what it was last year. A lot of people blame that on them jettisoning one of their 3 top tight ends, and that the offense hasn't looked the same ever since. I know Mark Ingram's nicked up too, and now you have the number 2 run defense in the league coming in Indianapolis. How do you see that run game battle shaping up between those two squads?
Well, I think the Ravens are built on the run game. They ran very well against Pittsburgh. Their issue has been the passing game. It's not been very good. When you have a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, and I know he's coming off an MVP year, and he's already been, being talked about as being great, but there's a balance between quarterbacks who are so athletically special and their ability to move and their ability to throw. And I'm not saying I know the balance, but there is a balance. And I think right now he's starting to move prematurely out of the pocket. Yes, will he make special runs on occasion? Of course he will. But he's leaving throws on the field. He's a little frenetic, a little undisciplined. If you watch him, as I do, obviously, you'll see a lot of sidearm throws, a lot of things that, I don't think make for consistent quarterback play. And it took him a 30-yard completion to Snead on a busted coverage at the end of the game last week to get over 200 yards. And that was the first time he'd been over 200 yards passing in 5 weeks. So they're not throwing the ball particularly well.
Last one from me. How much of an impact does Antonio Brown have with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I mean, he's a great player, no question. He's a very talented player. What's that change for them, and how good does it make them?
Well, I think it makes him pretty darn good, Steve, because I think you'll see him both outside and in the slot, because Godwin can also line up outside and in the slot. And Godwin, I guess we don't know if he's playing this week, but he will be back. It's just a finger injury. So if you talk about Godwin, Brown, and Evans, Steve, I mean, is there a better trio of receivers in the NFL than those 3 guys? And Brady and Gronk has become a factor the last 3-4 weeks, and Brady's clearly developing some rhythm. So I think that offense could just really take off as the season progresses.
It is an embarrassment of riches for sure. Greg, is there any chance that Buffalo-Seattle makes the matchup show?
There is, and it is in, but I hate to inform you guys, I actually did a piece on Seattle's offense this week, but the game is in the show, and it's one of the best games on the schedule, quite honestly. So I'm really excited to see this game and how it plays out. I mean, obviously I'll see it on tape. Sunday I probably won't watch. Sunday I tend to just sit at home and watch Red Zone and let it roll all over me. But I will watch the game in great detail on tape, and I think it's a fascinating tactical game.
All right. Well,
too.
we look
Great.
forward
Thanks,
to you.
man.
We look forward to you and Matt Bowen breaking it down this weekend on that matchup show. So thanks very much as always for the time, Greg.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
All right, Greg Cosell, senior producer from NFL Films.